You know what's fascinating about wealthy people? They don't actually manage their money the way most of us think they do. While everyone's out here trying to figure out which cryptocurrency will make them rich overnight, or obsessing over the latest stock market trends, the truly wealthy are following a system so simple it sounds almost boring. And honestly, that's probably why it works so well. And I've spent years studying how people with serious money actually handle their finances. What I discovered will probably surprise you because it's not about having some secret investment strategy or knowing which hedge fund to throw your money at. It's about following a basic formula that anyone can use regardless of whether you're making 30,000 or 300,000 a year. Today I'm going to break down the exact system that separates the financially successful from everyone else. It's called the 15-65-20 rule. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how to implement it in your own life. This isn't theory or wishful thinking. This is the actual framework that can build real wealth over time. And the best part is that it's so straightforward you could start using it before your next paycheck arrives. But here's what makes this even more interesting. Most people think wealth management is complicated because that's what the financial industry wants you to believe. The more complex they make it sound, the more likely you are to pay someone else to handle it for you. The reality is that the fundamentals of building wealth haven't changed in decades, and they're simple enough that you could explain them to a teenager. The wealthy understand something that most people miss entirely. It's not about how much money flows into your bank account each month. It's about what happens to that money once it gets there. You can earn six figures and still be broke if you don't know how to manage what you make. Meanwhile, someone earning half that amount can build substantial wealth by following the right system. So let's dive into the 15-65-20 rule and see exactly how this works. The numbers represent percentages, and each percentage serves a specific purpose in your financial life. Think of it like a recipe for financial success. You wouldn't bake a cake by just throwing random ingredients together and hoping for the best, right? The same principle applies to your money. The first number, 15%, is arguably the most important part of this entire system. This is the portion of every dollar you earn that gets set aside for your future self. Not for bills, not for entertainment, not for that thing you've been wanting to buy. This money has one job, and that job is to work for you while you sleep. Now, I know what you're thinking. 15% sounds like a lot, especially if you're already struggling to make ends meet. But here's the thing that changes everything about how you view this number. This 15% serves two critical purposes, and understanding both of them will make it much easier to actually follow through with setting this money aside. The first purpose is creating what I call your financial safety net. Life has this annoying habit of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. Your car decides to break down right after you've paid all your bills for the month. You get hit with an unexpected medical expense, your employer decides to downsize, and you're suddenly looking for a new job. Without a financial cushion, these situations don't just create inconvenience, they create panic. Suddenly you're not just dealing with the problem itself, you're also scrambling to figure out how to pay for it. This is where most people end up reaching for credit cards or taking on debt that follows them around for months or even years. But when you have that 15% working for you, these situations become manageable inconveniences rather than financial disasters. You handle the problem, move on with your life, and maybe even sleep better at night knowing you're prepared for whatever comes next. The second purpose of this 15% is where things get really interesting, and it's the part that separates people who stay financially comfortable from people who build actual wealth. This money doesn't just sit in a savings account earning practically nothing, it gets put to work generating more money for you. This is where compound interest becomes your best friend, and honestly, it's one of the most powerful forces in finance. Einstein supposedly called it the eighth wonder of the world, and whether he actually said that or not, the sentiment is absolutely correct. When your money starts earning returns and those returns start earning their own returns, you create this snowball effect that can transform modest contributions into substantial wealth over time. Let me show you exactly how this works with a simple example that will probably change how you think about starting early versus starting later. Imagine two people, Sarah and James, who both want to build wealth but take different approaches to timing. Sarah decides to invest $10,000 when she turns 30. She finds investments that earn 6% annually, which is actually quite conservative compared to historical market performance. She doesn't add another penny to this investment for the next 20 years. When Sarah turns 50, that original $10,000 has grown to over $32,000. James takes a different approach. He waits until he's 40 to start investing, but then he contributes $2,000 every single year for 10 years. He earns the same 6% annual return as Sarah. By the time James turns 50, he's invested $20,000 total, and his account is worth about $28,000. Here's what's fascinating about this comparison. Sarah invested half as much money as James, but ended up with more wealth. The difference came down to giving her money more time to compound and grow. Those extra 10 years of growth made all the difference, even though she never added additional contributions. This example illustrates why the 15% rule is so powerful when you start early. Even small amounts of money can grow into substantial wealth when given enough time to compound. And the beautiful thing about compound interest is that it accelerates over time. The growth you see in year 20 is dramatically larger than the growth you see in year 5. Now, you might be wondering where exactly this 15% should go, and that's a great question because not all investment options are created equal. The wealthy understand that the government actually gives you special accounts designed to help you build wealth more efficiently. These accounts come with tax advantages that can significantly boost your returns over time. If you're working for an employer, there's a good chance they offer some kind of retirement plan with matching contributions. This is literally free money, and it's probably the best return on investment you'll ever find. When your employer matches your contributions, you're getting an instant 100% return before your money even gets invested. The key is making sure you contribute enough to capture the full employer match. If your company matches up to 5% of your salary and you're only contributing 3%, you're leaving free money on the table. That's like finding a $20 bill on the sidewalk and deciding to only pick up $10 of it. Beyond employer plans, there are individual accounts that offer tax advantages for long-term savers. In the United States, these include traditional and Roth IRAs. In the United Kingdom, you have ISAs. These accounts allow your investments to grow without being diminished by taxes along the way, which can add up to tens of thousands of dollars in additional wealth over a lifetime. The strategy the wealthy use is simple. Max out these tax-advantaged accounts first, then move on to regular investment accounts if you still have money to invest. It's like getting a discount on building wealth, and the government gives you these discounts as an incentive to save for your future. When it comes to actually investing this money, the wealthy have another secret that might disappoint anyone looking for excitement. They keep it incredibly boring. While everyone else is chasing the latest hot stock tip or trying to time the market perfectly, successful investors are putting their money into simple, diversified funds that track the overall market. These are called passive funds or index funds, and they're basically the financial equivalent of setting your investments on autopilot. Instead of trying to pick individual winning companies, you're buying a tiny piece of hundreds or even thousands of companies all at once. It's like ordering the sampler platter at a restaurant instead of betting everything on one dish that might turn out to be terrible. The beauty of this approach is that you don't need to become a financial expert or spend your weekends researching quarterly earnings reports. You don't need to predict which companies will succeed or fail. You're essentially betting on the overall growth of the economy, which historically has been a pretty safe bet over long periods of time. Plus, these funds come with incredibly low fees, which means more of your money actually gets to work for you instead of disappearing into someone else's pocket. It's amazing how those small fees can eat away at your returns over time. A fund that charges 2% annually might not sound like much, but over 30 years, that difference can cost you tens of thousands of dollars in lost growth. The wealthy understand that consistency beats brilliance almost every time. They'd rather earn steady returns year after year than swing for the fences and risk striking out completely. It's not glamorous, but it works, and that's really all that matters when you're building long-term wealth. Now, let's talk about the 65% portion of this rule, which covers your fundamental living expenses. This is where most people either succeed or fail at managing their money effectively, and it's trickier than you might think because these expenses have a sneaky way of expanding to fill whatever space you give them. You know how this works. You get a raise at work, and suddenly your old apartment feels too small. Your reliable car starts looking outdated compared to what your coworkers are driving. That vacation you used to think was extravagant becomes your new baseline for what you deserve. Before you know it, you're earning more money, but somehow feeling just as financially stressed as before. Economists have a fancy term for this phenomenon. They call it lifestyle inflation, but I prefer to think of it as the financial equivalent of Parkinson's law. Just like work expands to fill the time available, your expenses will expand to consume whatever income you allow them to consume. The 65% cap is your defense against this natural tendency. By setting a firm limit on how much of your income goes toward basic living expenses, you create boundaries that protect your ability to save and invest. It forces you to make conscious choices about your spending rather than just letting it drift upward whenever you have a little extra money coming in. Now, I'll be honest with you, keeping your fundamental expenses to 65% of your income isn't always easy, especially if you live in an expensive city where rent alone might eat up 40 or 50% of what you make. But here's the thing about constraints, they force you to get creative and find solutions you wouldn't have considered otherwise. Like, maybe that means getting a roommate to split housing costs. Maybe it means choosing a slightly longer commute in exchange for significantly lower rent. Maybe it means buying a reliable used car instead of financing something newer and more expensive. These aren't necessarily fun decisions, but they're the kind of decisions that create space in your budget for wealth building. The key is understanding what actually qualifies as a fundamental expense. We're talking about housing, transportation, food, utilities, and other true necessities that keep your life functioning. The streaming services, gym memberships, dining out, and impulse purchases fall into a different category entirely. Housing typically represents the largest chunk of this 65%, which makes sense because shelter is pretty much non-negotiable, but there's a big difference between having a place to live and having the perfect place to live. The wealthy often choose to live below their means in this area, at least early in their wealth building journey, because they understand that an extra few $100s per month in housing costs can translate to tens of thousands of dollars in lost investment growth over time. Transportation is another area where you can make smart choices that free up money for more important things. The average car payment in America is now over $700 per month, which is absolutely insane when you think about it. You're paying $700 every month for something that's losing value the moment you drive it off the lot. Meanwhile, a reliable used vehicle might cost you $300 per month, and that $400 difference could be going toward investments that actually grow in value over time. After 10 years, that $400 per month invested at reasonable returns could be worth over $60,000. Suddenly, that shiny new car doesn't look like such a great deal anymore. Food is where things get interesting because this category spans everything from genuine necessities to pure entertainment. You need to eat to survive, but you don't need to spend $15 on avocado toast or order takeout 5 nights per week. The wealthy tend to be strategic about their food spending, cooking at home more often, and treating restaurant meals as occasional treats rather than default options. The goal isn't to live like a monk or deprive yourself of everything enjoyable. It's about being intentional with your spending in these fundamental categories so that you create room for the fun stuff while still building wealth. And that brings us to the final piece of this puzzle. The 20% portion of the 15-65-20 rule might be the most important part of all, even though it's the one that people often feel guilty about. This is your permission slip to enjoy life without sabotaging your financial future. It's money set aside specifically for entertainment, hobbies, spontaneous purchases, and whatever else brings you joy. Now, you might be wondering why wealthy people would deliberately budget money for fun when they could be investing every possible dollar. The answer comes down to psychology and sustainability. People who try to save and invest every spare penny often end up burning out and abandoning their financial plans entirely. It's like trying to stick to an impossibly strict diet. Eventually, you're going to crack and binge on everything you've been denying yourself. The 20% rule prevents this financial binge and purge cycle by giving you permission to spend money on things you enjoy, guilt-free. When you know that 20% of your income is designated for fun, you can make those purchases without feeling like you're derailing your long-term goals. This psychological aspect is crucial because building wealth is a marathon, not a sprint. You need to create a system that you can stick with for decades, not just for a few months when your motivation is high. The wealthy understand that a sustainable plan you actually follow is infinitely better than a perfect plan you abandon after 6 months. Plus, there's actually some fascinating research that backs up this approach. Studies show that people who give themselves spending flexibility are significantly more likely to stick with their savings goals over the long haul. It's counterintuitive, but allowing yourself to spend money actually helps you save money. Who would have thought? This 20% can cover everything from that morning coffee ritual that keeps you sane to the occasional shopping spree to planning actual vacations without feeling like you're stealing from your future retirement fund. The key word here is intentional. You're not accidentally overspending and then feeling guilty about it later. You're deliberately allocating this money for enjoyment because you understand that life is meant to be lived, not just endured, while you wait for some magical future moment when you'll finally have enough money to be happy. Here's where most people mess this up though. They either skip this step entirely and try to save every possible dollar, which leads to burnout and resentment. Or they flip to the other extreme and treat every purchase as falling under the 20% umbrella, which obviously defeats the entire purpose of having categories in the first place. The wealthy are disciplined about this boundary. You know, when the 20% is gone for the month, it's gone. They don't borrow from next month's fun money, and they definitely don't start dipping into the 15% that's supposed to be working for their future. This is where that boring consistency I mentioned earlier really pays off. Now, let's talk about something that nobody wants to discuss, but everybody needs to hear. The 15-65-20 rule sounds simple in theory, but implementing it in real life can feel impossible when you're already stretched thin financially. If you're currently spending 90% of your income just to survive, then hearing about this system might feel more frustrating than helpful. But here's the thing about financial transformation that most people don't understand. It doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't require you to completely overhaul your entire life in one dramatic move. The wealthy didn't get where they are by making perfect decisions from day one. They got there by making slightly better decisions consistently over time. If you can't do 15% right now, start with 5%. If 65% for essentials seems impossible, aim for 75% and work your way down. The specific numbers matter less than developing the habit of living within intentional boundaries. Once you prove to yourself that you can stick to whatever percentages you choose, you can gradually adjust them to match the full system. The beautiful thing about this approach is that it grows with your income. When you get that raise or promotion, the dollar amounts in each category increase, but the percentages stay the same. This prevents lifestyle inflation from completely eating up your additional income while still allowing you to enjoy some of the benefits of earning more money. And here's something that might blow your mind. Most wealthy people didn't start out wealthy. They started out as regular people who happened to stumble across systems like this one and had the discipline to stick with them long enough to see results. The difference between them and everyone else isn't intelligence or luck or having rich parents. It's consistency and patience. So there you have it. The 15-65-20 rule isn't some revolutionary secret that only billionaires know about. It's just basic math wrapped in discipline, which apparently makes it rarer than a unicorn. Start with whatever percentages you can manage, be consistent about it, and watch compound interest do what it does best. Your future self will either thank you or wonder why you waited so long to get started.